On Christmas Day, in front of 40 elite guests, my mother-in-law Victoria threw my gift to the floor, struck my face, and ordered me into the snow. She sneered that I was a penniless, low-class nobody who ruined her son Leo's prestigious family name. For 2 years, I hid my real identity, living simply and enduring her cruelty just to protect our peace. Victoria believed she was an untouchable socialite lording over a helpless victim. But she had no idea that her bankrupt boutique chain, her pending multi-million-dollar loans, and the very ancestral manor she stood in all belonged to one person, me, the sole chairwoman of the Brooks Trust. Exactly 2 hours later, my executive directors walked through the doors with the official eviction deeds, and Victoria watched her entire kingdom crumble to dust before her very eyes. My name is Sienna Brooks. At 27 years old, I live what most people would consider a quiet, unassuming life, spending my mornings tending to our small garden and my afternoons taking care of our sweet 4-year-old daughter, Ella. My husband, Leo, is a talented, hardworking architectural draftsman who puts in long, demanding hours at a local design firm. To the outside world, we are just an ordinary young couple driving a reliable second-hand station wagon, shopping at discount grocery stores, and finding joy in simple home-cooked meals. What nobody in our everyday circle knows is that behind our modest lifestyle lies an extraordinary reality. 3 years ago, following the passing of my grandfather, I became the sole heir and majority owner of the Brooks Hospitality and Real Estate Trust, a premier commercial property conglomerate holding hundreds of prime residential buildings, luxury boutique hotels, and sovereign equity accounts. I grew up witnessing how sudden, flashing displays of wealth attract shallow opportunists, manipulative freeloaders, and bitter family rivalries. I didn't want that poison anywhere near my marriage or my child. When Leo and I met, he fell in love with me for my heart, my humor, and my warmth, completely unaware of the vast corporate empire bearing my family name. We were deeply happy, but our peace had one constant, toxic shadow: Leo's mother, Victoria. Victoria was a bitter, status-obsessed socialite who measured human dignity entirely by designer labels, country club memberships, and inherited prestige. From the moment Leo introduced us, Victoria treated me with open contempt. She made cutting remarks about my simple cotton dresses, rolled her eyes at my lack of a high society pedigree, and constantly told extended relatives that I was a penniless nobody who trapped her golden boy. For 2 full years, I swallowed her insults, held my head high, and kept the peace for Leo's sake. I believed that showing patience and respect would eventually soften her heart, especially for the sake of her granddaughter. I was wrong. Victoria mistook my quiet grace for spineless weakness, and as the family gathered for Christmas dinner at her grand manor, her cruelty was about to cross a line that could never be forgiven. Christmas Day at Victoria's sprawling ancestral manor was an exercise in ostentatious vanity. The grand ballroom was illuminated by crystal chandeliers, adorned with towering evergreen garlands, and filled with over 40 extended family members and prominent local socialites. Everyone was dressed in black tie attire, sipping vintage champagne, and laughing over high-stakes business gossip. From the minute Leo, Ella, and I stepped through the front entrance, Victoria's hostility was on full display. She barely looked at my husband, completely ignored 4-year-old Ella's excited wave, and looked down her nose at my modest emerald wool dress with open disgust. "How quaint," Victoria muttered loudly enough for her bridge club partners to hear. "I see you dressed for a bargain bin clearance sale rather than an elite family tradition, Sienna." Throughout the afternoon, Victoria treated me not as a daughter-in-law, but as unpaid household staff. While the other guests relaxed by the marble fireplace, Victoria constantly ordered me to clear hors d'oeuvre platters, refill empty crystal flutes, and fetch extra firewood from the damp cellar. When sweet little Ella proudly presented a handmade, glitter-covered Christmas card she had spent 3 days drawing for her grandmother, Victoria took the paper with 2 fingers, sneered, and tossed it into a decorative wastebasket, calling it messy preschool garbage. Tears welled in Ella's eyes, and Leo immediately stepped in, demanding his mother apologize. But Victoria simply laughed it off, raising a glass to announce that dinner was served. The breaking point arrived at the grand dining table just as dessert was laid out. Hoping to bring warmth to the icy atmosphere, I gently set down a beautifully wrapped box in front of Victoria, a painstakingly restored, hand-bound leather album containing century-old photographs of her late parents and family lineage that I had spent months tracking down. Victoria stared at the gift as though someone had placed a venomous snake on her porcelain plate. She snatched the album, ripped the vintage binding in half, and hurled the pieces across the hardwood floor. "You dare insult me with this cheap, worthless junk," Victoria screeched, surging out of her chair in theatrical fury. Before anyone could move, Victoria closed the distance between us and struck me across the face with a violent, stinging slap. The sound cracked through the dining room like a gunshot. The entire room fell into petrified silence. "You are a penniless, low-class parasite who dragged my son into the gutter," Victoria snarled, trembling with rage. "Leo, you will choose right now. Divorce this nobody and reclaim your rightful inheritance, or watch her get thrown out into the snow like the stray dog she is." A heavy, suffocating silence gripped the grand dining hall. My cheek burned, but I didn't cry, scream, or flinch. I slowly turned my head back, looking directly into Victoria's trembling, venomous eyes with absolute calm. Leo was already out of his chair. His face was flushed red with pure fury, his fists clenched as he stepped between his mother and me. "You have crossed a line you can never come back from," Leo said, his voice shaking with absolute disgust. "We're done, Mother. You will never see Ella again, and you will never see me again. We are leaving right now." Leo turned to lift Ella into his arms, but I gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Take Ella up to the private East guest suite for a few minutes, Leo. Let her color in her notebook. I'll be right there." Leo hesitated, seeing the cool, unwavering resolve in my eyes, then nodded and carried our daughter out of the room. I walked away from the stunned gaze of 40 high society guests, ascending the sweeping oak staircase with quiet grace. 2 years of turning the other cheek, 2 years of swallowing insults for the sake of family harmony. All of it ended the second her hand struck my face. Once inside the quiet study of the guest wing, I locked the door, pulled out my encrypted mobile phone, and dialed a private direct line. It was answered on the half ring by Harrison Sterling, the Chief Executive Managing Director of the Brooks Trust. "Good evening, Chairwoman Brooks," Harrison answered, his tone crisp and attentive. "Merry Christmas, ma'am." "Good evening, Harrison," I said, my voice steady, sharp, and commanding. "I am calling regarding Victoria Vance's outstanding debt profile and the emergency refinance application submitted for her luxury boutique chain." "Of course, Chairwoman," Harrison replied promptly. "Our audit division flagged her accounts yesterday. Her boutique operations are running a $3 million structural deficit, and her private ancestral estate is collateralized under our sovereign trust note. She is completely over-leveraged and awaiting your final board authorization tonight. Freeze the loan approval immediately," I instructed, looking out the frost-covered window into the snowy night. "Prepare the complete mortgage deed for this estate, print the defaulted debt covenants, and have the executive directors drive them out to the manor within the hour. It's time Victoria learns whose roof is over her head." Downstairs in the grand ballroom, the holiday party resumed as if nothing had happened. Victoria stood by the marble mantelpiece holding a fresh glass of sparkling wine, laughing loudly with her socialite friends and soaking in their superficial flattery. She made no effort to hide her gloating, boasting to everyone within earshot that she had finally put her peasant daughter-in-law in her proper place and saved her son from a catastrophic life mistake. Her circle nodded in polite agreement, eager to remain in the good graces of a woman they believed was the wealthy matriarch of a grand estate. Victoria checked her diamond-encrusted watch every few minutes with visible nervousness. Beneath her arrogant facade, she was hanging on by a thread. Her luxury fashion boutique chain was drowning under months of unpaid vendor invoices, overdue staff salaries, and crippling retail rents. Tonight was the final deadline for a critical $3 million emergency commercial refinancing package she had desperately applied for through the city's premier private holding group. Without that capital injection before midnight, her business accounts would be frozen by tomorrow morning. Suddenly, the front gravel driveway crunching under heavy tires drew the attention of the ballroom. Two sleek, black institutional sedans pulled up in front of the manor, headlights sweeping across the frost-covered lawn. Chauffeurs stepped out to open the passenger doors, and four distinguished men in tailored charcoal overcoats emerged, carrying thick, gold-embossed executive portfolios. Victoria gasped in sheer delight, assuming her desperate financial prayers had been answered. "They're here," Victoria declared triumphantly to the entire room, smoothing her evening gown and flashing a smug, confident smile. "The executive board of the Brooks Trust has personally delivered the authorization for my multi-million-dollar expansion loan. You see? True prestige always commands private, red carpet service on Christmas Day." She hurried toward the front foyer, throwing the heavy double oak doors wide open to welcome the elite guests. "Good evening, gentlemen," Victoria proclaimed warmly, offering a regal hand to the lead director. "Welcome to the Vance Ancestral Manor. I assume you have the finalized debt refinance contracts ready for my signature." The lead executive, Harrison Sterling, stopped cold on the welcome rug. He looked at Victoria's outstretched hand with an expression of icy, professional detachment, keeping his own hands firmly at his side. "We are not here to execute your loan, Mrs. Vance," Harrison stated, his deep voice carrying clearly into the packed, silent ballroom. "We are here on emergency orders to deliver default foreclosure paperwork directly to the sole property owner and majority chairwoman of this entire estate." Victoria blinked in total bewilderment, letting her hand drop awkwardly to her side. "Sole property owner?" Victoria sputtered, letting out a nervous, high-pitched chuckle that echoed off the high ceiling. "Gentlemen, you are standing in the Vance Ancestral Manor. My family has occupied this estate for 3 generations. There is no other owner. Now stop this nonsense, give me the refinancing drafts, and let my guests enjoy their evening." "I'm afraid you are profoundly mistaken, Mrs. Vance," Harrison replied with unyielding calm. At that exact moment, the soft, rhythmic click of leather heels echoed down the sweeping marble staircase. Every single head in the grand foyer turned. I walked down the steps with slow, deliberate grace. The modest wool cardigan was gone. In its place was a sharp, tailored midnight blue jacket, my posture straight and commanding. Beside me walked Leo, holding little Ella's hand. In my right hand, I carried a heavy, midnight black leather binder stamped with the gilded insignia of the Brooks Hospitality and Real Estate Trust. The moment my feet touched the foyer floor, Harrison and the 3 senior directors immediately stepped past Victoria, stopped 3 feet in front of me, and bowed their heads in deep, practiced reverence. "Good evening, Chairwoman Brooks," Harrison announced in a voice that carried to every single corner of the silent ballroom. "We have delivered the emergency default covenants and verified asset registries per your direct command." The silence that fell over the room was absolute. 40 high society socialites, relatives, and business partners froze mid-breath, their wine glasses suspended in the air. Victoria's face turned from confusion to an ashen, horrified mask of disbelief. Her jaw dropped, her eyes bulging as she looked between me and the highest-ranking corporate financiers in the state. "See, Chairwoman," Victoria stammered, clutching her throat. No, this is some sick joke. Sienna is a broke nobody. She doesn't own anything. 6 months ago, Victoria, your private accounts were completely drained," I said, my voice cutting through the room with crystal clarity. "You were 3 days away from being publicly foreclosed on by the primary lenders." To spare Leo the heartbreak of watching his childhood home dragged through bankruptcy court, the Brooks Trust quietly stepped in and acquired 100% of your delinquent mortgage debt and ancestral deed. I opened the folder and turned the verified title deed toward the crowd, showing my signature and the official state seal. "You haven't owned this house in half a year," I continued, looking Victoria dead in the eye. "You've been living here solely on my personal goodwill that you completely destroyed tonight." Harrison stepped forward, opening the second portfolio to lay a series of certified red-stamped audit reports on the dining table. Furthermore, Mrs. Vance, Harrison stated with clinical precision, our forensic review has uncovered that you unlawfully diverted $280,000 from the family's legacy trust into your personal boutique accounts to cover lavish vacations and high-end jewelry purchases. Your commercial loan application has been formally denied. All discretionary family trust stipends are immediately terminated, and per Chairwoman Brooks's directive, we are serving you with this legal notice of default and immediate commercial eviction. Victoria's knees buckled. She reached out blindly, grabbing the edge of the antique console table to keep from collapsing to the floor. The socialites and business elites who had spent the entire evening flattering her and laughing at her cruel jokes began exchanging uneasy glances. Without a word of sympathy, they quietly set down their crystal champagne flutes, collected their designer mink coats from the foyer, and slipped out into the cold night air, desperate to distance themselves from her total downfall. "Leo, darling, tell her to stop," Victoria wailed, tears streaming down her powdered cheeks as she turned toward her son with frantic, outstretched hands. "This is our family home. You can't let this girl take everything from us. I did all of this to protect our name." Leo looked down at his mother, his expression carved from solid granite. "You didn't do this to protect our name, Mother," Leo said, his voice ringing through the emptying manor with devastating clarity. "You did it out of boundless vanity, endless greed, and pure malice. You humiliated my wife, you struck the mother of my child, and you threw my 4-year-old daughter's drawings into the trash while living under a roof paid for by Sienna's charity. As of tonight, you have no son, and you have no granddaughter. Whatever happens to you from this moment forward, you brought entirely upon yourself." Victoria fell to her knees upon the Persian rug, clutching the official eviction notice to her chest as desperate apologies tumbled from her trembling lips. She begged Sienna for mercy, claiming she had been under terrible financial stress, but her tears were far too late. The illusion of her untouchable high society life had completely shattered. Surrounded by the hollow grandeur of a house she no longer owned, stripped of her pride, her fortune, and the family she had abused for years, Victoria Vance was left with nothing but the deafening echo of her own ruined arrogance. The eviction notice was formally enforced within 30 days. Stripped of the family trust stipends and facing bankruptcy from her failed boutique chain, Victoria was forced to pack her belongings and move into a small, rented one-bedroom apartment across town. The country clubs revoked her memberships, and the fair-weather socialite circle she had spent her life trying to impress vanished overnight. For the first time in her existence, Victoria had to live within her actual means, confronting the harsh reality that status bought with superficial pride is nothing more than an empty illusion. Back at our cozy home, the air felt lighter, warmer, and filled with a peace we hadn't known in years. Leo, Ella, and I spent the rest of that winter evening gathered in front of our crackling living room fireplace. We made hot cocoa, roasted marshmallows, and listened to Ella's sweet laughter as she proudly taped her colorful handmade Christmas cards onto our refrigerator. Leo wrapped his arms around me, kissing the crown of my head, whispering words of gratitude for my patience and quiet strength. In that simple, tender moment, surrounded by genuine warmth, I knew that our family's foundation was completely unbreakable. A few weeks later, Leo and I made a joint decision regarding the Grand Vance Manor. We chose not to keep the estate for ourselves or sell it off to luxury developers. Instead, we legally restructured the entire property under the Brooks Foundation, transforming the historic building into a dedicated community center and transitional housing facility for underprivileged mothers and children seeking a fresh start in life. Watching the grand halls that were once filled with cold arrogance become a vibrant sanctuary of hope, education, and genuine kindness was the greatest satisfaction imaginable. True dignity has never been about inherited titles, designer labels, or multi-million-dollar trust ledgers. Real power is found in quiet character, unwavering honesty, and the courage to protect the people you love from cruelty. Victoria spent her entire life trying to look down on others from a pedestal of borrowed wealth, only to realize too late that when you mistake patience for weakness, the truth will always rise to tear your kingdom down.